I've read some good stuff lately. It's pretty exciting. Kim here, welcome back. I'm bringing you another book review today. Quick disclaimer, I did receive the book from the publisher in exchange for an honest review. I guess another disclaimer, that's great. If you haven't seen my How I Rate Books video, that's right there. You may want to consider watching that first just because I have my own book rating system that might seem weird if you haven't watched this video. I just read The King of Average by Gary Schwarz. The headline for this review would be Phantom Tollbooth-esque. The King of Average is a middle grade story about a boy named James, and he decides that his greatest aspiration is to be average. He comes from kind of a broken home with a mother who doesn't appreciate him, and he feels very unloved and kind of sad and like he's never good enough. So he decides that the best thing he can do is just become the most average. Shortly after making this decision, a goat appears wearing a sweater vest. His name is Mayor Culpa, and he takes James into another world where James is to become the literal king of average. This is where the story gets a little Phantom Tollbooth-esque because all of the places in this other world have a play on words for names, and like the name of the kingdom is average and James is to become king where everyone is average and they strive to be right in the middle and perfectly normal. So all sorts of things like that. My overall rating for this book was a 14 out of 20, which sort of translates to 4 stars on Goodreads. I gave the writing and style a 2 out of 4, the characters a 3 out of 4, the story a 3 out of 4, the pacing a 3 out of 4, and the ending a 3 out of 4, giving it an overall score of 14 out of 20. Before I break down these categories, I want to say that my main takeaway from this book is a solid middle grade book that is very much like the Phantom Tollbooth, just with the play on words and the stumbling upon characters and going on a quest and things like that in this other world with all these play on words and grammar and vocabulary and things like that. Unfortunately, it did kind of lack the whimsy and the charm that the Phantom Tollbooth had, and I felt like when there was a new word introduced, it wasn't explained very well, and this author does kind of use too big of words for a middle grade novel. That being said, I actually really enjoyed the story, and my favorite part were these characters because he had some really cool characters, and there was a really cool friendship bond with this sort of ensemble cast that I really, really liked, and that I really, really thought made it a great story. Let's break it down. I gave the writing/style a 2 out of 4, mainly because of the reasons I just stated. Like, I feel like sometimes there were words that were too big for a middle grade reader that weren't explained very well, and I feel like a lot of times the author was sort of telling, not showing. Every once in a while there'd be a really, really great line that he would say that I would just be like, oh, that's fantastic. But then other times it would seem kind of like lazy writing and telling, not showing. A character would kind of get in trouble and they'd be scared for him, and then the character would suddenly reappear and tell the story of how they escaped, instead of us actually being there with them. And I didn't love that. There was sort of a stylistic choice with it in the writing that I'm not sure if it was a writing choice or if it was a formatting kind of error that happens with ebooks, because sometimes it is a formatting thing that it just doesn't cross over very well. I feel like it was a writing choice, but I'm not 100% sure. A lot of times the same character would be speaking, but he would start a new paragraph, so you would think another character was replying. And that was kind of confusing, and I feel like being a middle grade novel, you can't really afford to be confusing that way. What I did like about the writing was this play on words. I absolutely love that. I love the puns, I loved the Kingdom of Average, Mount Impossible, and I loved Epiphany, and all of these things that just really came together really cool. While sometimes it did kind of lack the charm, I still thought it was great fun, and I thought it was very creative. It just made the adventure lighthearted and more fun, I felt like. The characters got a 3 out of 4. The characters were my favorite part of the story, I think, especially the friendship, but I'll get more into that with the story. I loved all of the friends that James made throughout this journey. Mayor Culpa was just so adorable and wonderful, and you just wanted to snuggle him. Then you get Rosé and Killjoy, who are so funny and just play against each other, and usually characters like Killjoy, who is very negative, they're a pessimist and an optimist, like that's what they are, like literally. And a lot of times this sort of pessimistic sort of negativity bothers me, but the way it played off of the optimism of Roger, I loved. I loved their rapport, I loved their friendship. There was a time about halfway through the story, no spoilers, where there's sort of a something that happens to Roger and Killjoy's relationship. And I'm not kidding you guys, I had tears brimming because I understood their relationship and I loved their relationship, and the fact that it was tested was so like scary for me because I just loved their friendship and their partnership, and I loved the characters. I really, really loved the characters. They were well-rounded, they were fun, they were good friends, but they weren't too perfect. There was still a little bit of conflict in the group. I loved it. I loved them. I really loved the characters. I gave the story a 3 out of 4. The overall like friendships in the story is what really just sealed it for me, that made me love it so much. And I really liked that James was on a journey of discovery. I liked that all of his friends were on a journey of discovery. I liked that they were together, and I liked that when one of them wasn't there, that they all suffered for it. I liked that they were there for each other, and I love that none of them were perfect. None of them were perfect. Even the Optimists, like, it was still sometimes it was like, okay, you could like not be so excited about this certain doom that we're facing. It was just so cool that this friendship was such a cool group, and that this adventure and quest was chosen by James, but then he decides to take it a step further, which I really liked, to keep the story going and going, so that we're seeing all of these lands that are so great. And I loved how they each discovered things, and I thought it was fun and adventurous. I didn't love that towards the middle of the book there was sort of a crush introduced. One of the reasons I love middle grade stories is the fact that that's rarely a thing. There's not really a lot of like love interest / oh, I have a crush on a girl kind of moments, and this had that, and I was a little disappointed by that. The overall story was actually pretty great, and I did really enjoy it. I gave the pacing a 3 out of 4 just because there were a few times when things would get kind of exciting and then it would sort of slow down and we'd hear the story of how it was resolved. And that kind of ties in with the writing and style, but it did break up the pacing a little bit for me, which I didn't love. But other than that, it moved pretty well. It didn't really get slow. It just sort of got weird and choppy every once in a while. I gave the ending a 3 out of 4. The reason the ending didn't get a 4 out of 4 is just because I felt like it was a tad abrupt, just a little bit abrupt when James comes to his final realization. Of course, all my reviews are spoiler free, so I'm not going to give any spoilers to the ending. But I do want to say that it ended a tiny bit abrupt for me, just with the final discovery that James kind of comes to with his inner self. That I thought could have been led up to a little bit more. And I also thought that James, in reflection to his life back home, got a little emotionally complicated for a middle grade reader to maybe fully come to terms with in the speed in which it happened. I feel like it would have been a little better if it had been a tiny bit more of a slow burn to this emotional complexity that he kind of gets to. But overall, I really liked how it ended. I liked that the decisions James came to, I liked that he came to those decisions. Like, I liked the decisions he made, and I liked how it ended for everybody. It left me feeling like I had read a good middle grade adventure story. My final thoughts on The King of Average. While it was very Phantom Tollbooth-esque, it did lack the charm, as I said before, which is fine. Like, you wouldn't want to repeat, so it's okay. Like, it didn't make me go like, oh, this is just a total knockoff, because not at all. Not at all, not at all. It just reminded me of that with the play on words in the different world. Honestly, I think it might make a little bit of a better movie than a book. I feel like it was written a little bit like a script or a screenplay, not quite like a middle grade novel, just with the telling versus showing. But all in all, it rendered some really great friendship emotion for me that I really, really loved. And the characters were so lovable and so wonderful that I really, really enjoyed the read. And I'm really very thankful that the publisher sent this to me because I really enjoyed it. And it really was classic middle grade fun and a great quest adventure story with just the most wonderful friendships and characters. I just really liked it. That's gonna do it for this review. Thanks so much for watching, you guys. Consider subscribing if you haven't already. Think about ringing that little bell by the subscribe button, just because YouTube doesn't always like to tell you when your friends have posted new videos. Thanks again for watching, you guys. We'll see you later.